With all the market noise and new policy changes in 2025, some experts are calling this year to be the smartest time to retire. This week on The Capitalist Investor, we're going to put our spin on this exact topic.
2025, why it is possibly the best year to retire. And we come up with these topics and we see them kind of placed in front of us, and it's like, yeah, you know what, this does make a lot of sense. So I got actually quite a bit of feedback from last week's episode, so that was good. Okay. Everyone seemed to really enjoy that topic of not only spending. Some people said it was like, hey, we're just telling everyone to spend as much
No,
as
we're not. I'm not telling you to spend.
It's the opposite of that, really.
Yeah, it's like, hey, you have the potential to spend.
Yeah, if your plan says it's okay.
If your plan can say it's okay. I don't want you to go out and hit the ground running. I want you to ease into that. But this week it's like, hey, if you're still working, why is 2025 the best year to retire?
Yeah.
So we got some good ideas on why it would be. So first things first is, let's talk about the market. We're in our third year of a complete market melt up. Now, back in April, you would have thought like, oh my God, the world's coming to an end. Mm-hmm. Market's down almost 20% in April, but we have catapulted out of April, and we are 35% up from the April lows, and we're up 13% year to date. So accounts are up still, right? And plus, if you're still working, you're probably making contributions, so like that actually helps the account grow as well. The other opportunity, though, is if you are working and you are contributing to a 401k, this is your opportunity to lock in the gains while the markets are near or at all-time highs. Because what a 401k at the end of the day really is, it's a growth machine. Mm-hmm. There's nothing in there other than growth products like mutual funds, ETFs, things like that. They're the other side of that equation is that they're not very sophisticated. They're meant for growth. Well, if they're meant for growth, that means they're meant for high losses when the market's not growing, right? So remember back in 2008, everyone's 401k became a 201k. Yep. So that is the one thing you need to consider is like locking in the gains, right? Because I'm not telling you to retire and take your 401k and dig a hole in your backyard and bury the cash. Yep. Right? I'm telling you, you can add sophistication to lower the, you might lower the highs, but you're going to lower the lows. You're going to be able to balance this thing out where you probably don't have that opportunity in a 401k. So those are my things, because in a 401k, what do you got? Target funds, limited options, no alternatives. This is your opportunity to lock in those gains and add some of these items that can keep you from the volatility of what a 401k really is.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, before we started recording, we're talking about taking the opposite of the public in NFL football games. That's always a good strategy. Not always. But I'm just joking there. But when everyone is, it's rainbows and puppy dogs and everyone's happy in the market, those are typically the times where, you see an unexpected correction. I'm not saying that's coming around the corner. I'm just saying that's kind of how it usually works out. And like, Warren Buffett said, when there's blood out there in the streets, that's a good time to invest. So I am a huge proponent of locking in gains, especially if you are, going to retire in the next year or so. I'm working with some of my clients whose, accounts have bubbled up over the last 2 years, to lock in some of those gains as well. There's, just because you get a little bit more conservative, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be less sophisticated, like Tony was saying as well. You can lock in some gains into some protected products. If the market goes down over the course of the next year, you protect those losses, and then kind of on the upside the next year, you're gonna participate in a lot of that upside as well. So locking in gains is something I'm a big believer in.
Yep, and you can create other buckets.
Yep,
right.
Absolutely.
That some are meant for growth, some are stability, some are income, all of that stuff. Next thing is new policy and tax rules. Are locked in with the one big beautiful bill was passed. Several tax provisions and retirement account changes from this bill have taken effect. So some of the things that just kind of come to mind immediately to me are lower tax brackets are locked in. That's a good thing. Additional standard deduction of $6,000 for people over 65 with incomes of, if you're single, 75 grand or 150 grand. But that is now an additional money that is going to drop to the bottom of your checking account where it really counts, right? The SALT deduction, the caps were raised from 10 grand to 40 grand. And starting next year, there will be an above the line charitable deduction of 1 grand if you're single or 2 grand if you're married. Basically, you just, they weren't able to do this before because the standard deductions were so big, but it now gives you an additional 2 grand that you can write off.
Yep, absolutely.
That's nice. So those are some of the things that stick out immediately with the new policy changes.
Yeah, for sure. And also kind of one of the points I wrote down here, we were staring down the barrel of a, $5 trillion tax and spend strategy that the Democrats were trying to roll out around election time. So, we always say this show really isn't a, kind of a partisan, political takes. We talked extensively about how worried we were about the potential, tax consequences of a Kamala Harris presidency, and we avoided it. And now, like Tony just laid out, we're in pretty much the best tax environment of our lifetime.
Yeah.
Even better than 2016, in my opinion. Those extra standard, the extra $6,000 on the standard deduction, that's going right to the bottom line of a lot of my clients, accounts, like Tony mentioned. So the tax situation is extremely, extremely good, and one that you should plan for in retirement.
Yep. And the only thing I would add is, the locking in the tax rates were great. I think the next step is like getting these tariffs under wraps and under control is going to create a lot of clarity for businesses to spend money.
Yep.
So hopefully, hasn't been ahead of the topics lately on, the newsreels and things like that, but they're still there.
Yep.
Right. All right. Increased limits for catch-up and contributions. Well, this is always just kind of a staple, right? You're able to have your catch-up provision. So if you are going to retire maybe this year or in 2026, you can squeak out some max contributions right before retirement into your 401ks, your IRAs, and that's like when I say when you retire, you're done earning, and that's the big thing. Like, and you can't save anymore.
Right.
You're immediately spending. So, and that's what you build your nest egg for. So get it while you can, right? Contribute while you can, because there's an infinite amount of time that you can only do that, right? You can only do it for a certain amount of time, and you have to have W-2 wages.
Yep. Finite, I think.
Finite, yeah. Sorry, not infinite.
I gotcha.
Yeah, that's me and my Tonyism sometimes. My bad. Healthcare and Medicare alignment. So, there's a lot of talk on, and I'm going to add a bonus part here on Social Security in a moment. But healthcare and Medicare alignment, it's always going to be increased. And another way to really look at this is that, I feel like that's why the standard deduction was increased, so that it's more money in people's pockets for increasing cost of things we almost can't control. Right. And that's healthcare and and healthcare and Medicare alignment, costs. So that was another thing from the bill that, again, they're trying to stabilize all those things. I think they're they're marching up a slippery slope that
Yes.
they're going to have a hard time doing that, right? So, but with the standard deduction, you can look at that as not free money, but money that can be used for increasing costs around you.
Yep, for sure. And I think, talking about planning and everything, the being able to account for increases in healthcare expenses is something that you should definitely be taking a look at, because I don't see the costs of healthcare being below the level of inflation ever again. So that is something that you want to make sure you have accounted for in your plan to be able to pick up those extra costs if they come.
Yep. Okay. Lifestyle and work trends favor flexibility. More companies are offering phased out retirement or part-time work. The old saying, it's hard to find good help and experienced help. So like, that's exactly it. There are a lot of companies there. I see a lot of people retired and they're still just working a couple hours a week to stay busy, extra income while they are quote unquote retired.
Yep.
And the employers need it because as a part-time worker, it helps them out with benefits and things like that. So they don't have to pay as much in benefits. Mm-hmm. But if you're of age, you shouldn't have to worry about that. So the only thing I would say, though, is you have to be careful on the balance, because our one stance is always, hey, when you retire, take Social Security as soon as you can. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to work part-time, it could work against you. Right. So again, everything about this is calculated. Well, in our closing comments, it's like, hey, just don't jump into the deep end because Tony and Derek said so. Right? It needs to be calculated. It needs to be discussed. It needs to be talked about. But that's another thing, right? Be careful when you turn on Social Security, because do you plan on having a side hustle in retirement?
Right. Absolutely.
Right? So,
and that, that side hustle, it's, we see it quite a bit. And then, just some non-financial advice. It seems to me that my clients, they can handle like kind of one, fairly large, like part-time assignment, for about a year or so. And then they kind of get sick of just doing that too.
Right.
So, everyone is different out there. I also have clients that, work 5, 6, 7, 8 years past when they actually need to, just because, that's, what they do. That's what they enjoy. So, always use potential part-time income as a kind of a what-if scenario in your financial plan, because it may not be there forever.
Right.
Right now, though, like we're talking about, it seems like companies are really, really trying to squeeze as much as they can for these part-time retirees. I'm not sure it's going to last forever, though, so don't make it the base case of your plan, but something that's a real nice bonus that can expand your lifestyle in retirement.
Yeah, I like adding a plan of not adding additional work. If you do, that's just gravy.
Right.
So, all right, and then I'm just going to add an extra topic here, Social Security. Always the stance of get it while you can, because I don't know the future of Social Security. The trust fund's supposed to run out in 6-7 years. That's crazy that number keeps on getting so close.
Yeah.
But who knows what's going to happen? They ain't gonna fix it until it's on our doorstep.
Yeah.
No politician's ever going to touch solutions to Social Security, because after it's going to cost them their election. Right. Who's going to do that? No one. Mm-hmm. Right. So again, get it while you can. But because 100-cent dollar today, it could be 70-cent dollar in a couple years. Yep. Never know, because you don't know how they're going to fix it. But all right, with that being said, like I mentioned before, don't just, hey, Derek and Tony said retire, let's do it. No, don't do that. Right? Talk to your advisor, run some numbers. Get a plan, get scenarios. Right? Hey, like a good scenario is like, hey, I retire. Oh man, the market tanked. Whoops, I planned it all wrong. Like build out a bear scenario, a bear market scenario where day one you retire, your accounts are down 20% on day one. I mean, it's very aggressive,
right?
But that's good. We want aggressive in a plan. We want to really stress it, right? So that's a good stress test. The other thing is like jumping into the deep end, well, you can't go back. There's a good possibility that A, you can't get your old job back, and B, you might not want to go back. Right? You're just mentally checked out and you're done. So you got to be prepared to make the decision. But the other thing is we talked about a little bit and started to insinuate, it's like now is the time though that you can start considering doing protective provisions in your liquid investments for your retirement, because you can lower risk. You can add more diversification from a 401k. You can add non-correlated assets that aren't available in your 401k. So that could be annuities. That could be alternatives like real estate, private credit, private equity. There's a lot of things that you can do that are non-correlated asset classes to the stock market. And that is probably your best, the silver lining if you retire, is bolting on sophistication to your retirement accounts.
Absolutely. Well, hey, this was a great episode about retirement and potentially being a good time to do it. If you guys have questions or comments, or want to talk to someone about your retirement, hit us up at info@swpconnect.com, and we'll talk to you next week.
The opinions expressed in the podcast are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any investment, legal, financial, or tax strategy. It is only intended to provide education about the financial industry. Please consult a qualified professional about your individual needs.